Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast, episode number 22. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
This is Rob Lucas from Chasing Tail, and you're listening to Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is Jay Scott, your host of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Podcast. We're back for episode number 22, and this week's show is about the guide. The guide that takes you hunting. You get to learn a lot about what a guide job is all about. We get to talk to Tim Moore from Tim Moore Outdoors. He is a guide in New Hampshire, and if you've ever thought about being a guide, this is a good show to listen to because it's this extra work. It's a service job. You have clients. It's not just about hunting. So, I mean, I've definitely thought about being a guide before, but ultimately decided not to. But Tim's doing it, and he's doing it with success. So if you've ever thought about being a guide, this is a good show to listen into. Give you some insight from the guide themselves. And then we're going to turn into our hunter highlight. It's that time of year where the big bucks are falling, and we get to take some of our fans and our listeners of the podcast who submit their deer on Facebook or on our website or shoot us a text or whatever, and we pick some of the best stories to highlight on the podcast, and we interview them and get them to tell us all their nooks and crannies about the hunt and find out what they use to be successful. So this is we're very excited about this one. We get to speak with Corey Cole, who actually used some of Deer Vanier's Northwoods Common Sense, the buck urine, to stop a buck in his tracks and was successful with a hunt in Missouri. And we get to hear every little detail about the hunt. Get to find out what happened, what time of year it was, the weather, everything that he did to prep for it, how he found the spot, all the way through the hunt itself, the kill, and what he did with the meat. So we got a great lineup for you today, so let's listen in as we speak to Tim Moore from Tim Moore Outdoors.
Mostly, especially for hunting, it's mostly on the seacoast, but
okay.
Other things, fishing, I will travel a bit.
Okay. Tell us how you got into guiding. I mean, where'd you grow up? What inspired you to get into this?
I grew up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, where I still live. My father was an avid hunter, got me involved in hunting, and in 1997, he got drawn for the New Hampshire Moose Lottery, and I was a sub-permittee.
Gotcha.
And I'd always kind of had this fascination with hunting guides, and but it was kind of like becoming Batman. It just didn't seem like it was anything that would really happen. We went on that moose hunt. We were successful, and I continued to apply and couldn't get drawn. And then it dawned on me one day that if I got my guide's license, I could probably go on a moose hunt every year. It was a hunt that I really enjoyed, and that was what made me take the test and get my hunting guide's license.
Gotcha. How does one become a guide? It's not, you can't just go out there, right? You can't just say, hey, I'm a guide. There's requirements to the whole system.
Correct. In order to take any form of compensation to assist somebody in hunting, you have to be licensed with the state of New Hampshire.
Okay.
And to do that, you send in an application.
Mm-hmm.
They're available on Fishing Game's website. It gives a link that says Become a Guide. And you fill out that application, send it in, and then they will give you a test date. And it's changed over the years. Now there's an oral panel that you test in front of, and they ask you a series of practical questions. And I believe it's an active and retired conservation officer and a member of the Guides Association.
Okay.
And they ask anything from, license-specific questions. If it's a hunting guide's license you're looking for, then they'll ask you hunting questions. Then there are safety and first aid questions, and then there's some navigation questions. And if you pass that, then it's a pass or fail. If you pass, you go on and you take the written exam.
Gotcha.
And which is a 50-question random computer random generated test. It's actually the same or similar program that's used in the moose lottery to generate those questions. I'm not sure how big that pool of possible questions is, but it was up last time. It was up to around 1,500 possible questions. And
wow.
I'm sure
Okay.
more than that now.
Now, did you have any when you're studying for the test? Did they give you study guides or things like that? How does that work?
Yeah, they'll mail you a packet of pamphlets and the hunting digest and specific RSAs that apply to guiding and things like that you have to know. And they'll give you a brief idea of what you should know.
Okay.
Which is basically what I just said, navigation, safety, and first aid, stuff like that. And you also have to have a first aid and CPR certification.
Okay. These are more or less the things that you probably should have as a hunter. Anybody that goes in the woods should have some basic knowledge of all those things, I would think. But this brings it to another level, another degree of responsibility, right? Because you're not just responsible for yourself, you're responsible for others at that point.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Now, why do we need a guide?
Well, there's actually many reasons that I've come across that people hire guides. And I think it varies by species and it varies by area. In my area where I guide, like say for deer, we have an abundance of deer in the southeast part of New Hampshire, and we have those wildlife management unit and antlerless permits that are quite abundant as well. So there are a lot of either newcomers to hunting, people that have been hunting for a while who have been unsuccessful, and then there are travelers. Those are the three major groups that I get.
Okay, so it's the new guy. It's the one that's unfamiliar, that might be not new, but unfamiliar with the area or people that are coming into the state to hunt.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
What is? Tell us about the complexities of the new guy. What are your concerns when you're bringing in a new hunter into the woods?
Safety is always the first concern.
Okay.
We keep that priority. We want them to not only be safe, but we want them to know how to keep other people safe. Handling their firearm and how to get in and out of a tree stand safely with a firearm. What sort of steps that we take as hunters to do that safely. Because the hunter safety course can be a whirlwind for people, especially somebody who's never been in the woods hunting to take it. And a lot of it might seem like a foreign language to them, or it's just new and they've never heard it, and it's easy to forget some of that stuff. And we keep that in mind. But it's also I focus mainly on the quality of the experience, because
right.
You can't guarantee that everybody's going to be successful.
Right.
There are just too many variables. So my main focus is always on the quality of the experience, and I try to offer people a quality experience. And I'll do things from pointing out wild edibles that they might not have ever seen that are common, to just telling stories and jokes and just to make sure they have a good time.
Right. The new hunter who is probably new to hunting, but doesn't have a great knowledge of the woods. That seems like it would be very helpful. As far as the safety items are concerned, all these new hunters have to go through hunter safety first, right?
Right.
Right. Okay. Tell us about the next person that is your typical customer, the person that wants to hunt the seacoast. What do you usually expect out of them?
It varies. Those seem to be the more difficult clients because they're less interested in experience. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that come to fill a tag aren't really going to be happy unless they fill that tag. So they can be a challenge, both because, like I said, you can't guarantee that there's going to be a kill, and especially with the number of hunters in this part of the state, anything can happen. The weather can change, the hunting pressure can increase. The hunter themselves might not be very thorough in scent control or movement, or I've had some folks that have gone to the bathroom almost directly under the stand, and things that are beyond my control can pose a challenge. And then at the end of the day, if they don't kill their tag, they tend to get upset with me.
Right.
And I try to preempt them ahead of time, that there are a lot of variables that are out of my control, and that there are a lot of variables that are out of my control and in their control, and point out what those are. And again, I still focus on the quality of the experience, because at the end of the day, that might be all they have left.
Right. Gotcha. Now, what about the third client, the traveler, the one that's coming into New Hampshire? Where are they coming from?
All over. I've had clients from as far away as Texas. I mean, I don't do bear hunts anymore, but I did bear hunts for a while, and I've had a client from Texas that came a couple of years. I've had clients come up from New Jersey. I've had a couple of clients come up from New Jersey to hunt in New Hampshire on New Jersey's opening day of firearm because they didn't want to be in the woods down there. It's just too much pressure.
Gotcha.
They have some unlimited unlimited doe areas down there. And I guess it gets pretty crazy. I've had a couple clients that have come up and wanted to hunt here just to avoid it.
Interesting. So some of the people that are coming from other states are actually feeling like there's too much pressure, too many other hunters. So they're coming up here where it's a little less populated.
Yep.
Interesting. Now,
and a lot of that might be, they're already in town anyways, visiting family.
Okay.
So those people will book as well. They'll get a day or two to go deer hunting.
Gotcha.
Or whatever.
Now, as a guide, you have to know the woods that you're hunting or the piece of properties that you're hunting better than pretty much everybody else. How do you find your properties? Are there relationships that you've developed, or are these properties you own? How does that work?
Yep, both. Well, I don't own any property, but relationships that I develop, for sure. I mean, I have some properties that I hunt that are private, that have relationships with the landowners. I have one. I run deer bait sites this year. I've been running, and I have a good relationship with a landowner who owns 184 acres, and it's not posted, but it's limited access. Doesn't let too many people in there, which makes it easier to run the bait sites. And it's just not hunters willy-nilly all day. And then there is a lot of public land. I mean, there's an abundance of land in New Hampshire, and we have this open land policy where if it's not posted, you can hunt it. So,
right.
It's not too hard, but I've been hunting my whole life. And there are places that I've hunted for 20 years
right.
that, luckily haven't been built up yet, or now there might be in conservation, some of them. And, I just am in there all the time. And you ask my wife.
Right.
I do a lot of scouting, trail cameras, and just general hunting experience over the years. I mean, you can pattern an area. I'm sure you can pattern the area. And there are places I don't even have to scout. I just go and get my stand, and I know the deer are going to come through there. Right.
There are some pinch point trails or things like that you become familiar with over the years as you learn these areas. Most hunters I know have learned a certain spot better than any other spot, and you can, unless the landscape changes, you can predict it for the most part.
Yeah, and development, as unfortunate as it is for, us losing land, it also helps pattern deer. It creates a lot of funnels that, it puts deer into, some smaller pieces of woods and makes them easier to get on and pattern.
Yep. Let's go back to that, the policy in New Hampshire that I find as I talk to other hunters around the country, the New Hampshire policy about posted land and non-posted land. It's huntable if it's not posted. It's tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, that's just it. If it's not posted, we don't have a private property, sort of rule like I think it's Illinois. You can't go on any piece of land without landowner permission. As long as you have that 300-foot buffer, you're 300 feet away from any permanently occupied dwelling. You can go in and hunt a piece of land unless the landowner tells you to leave. There are some other expectations that kind of go along with that get ignored a lot. Any reasonable attempt to keep you out of a piece of property is considered a posted piece of property, and that gets often overlooked. But we do have a very, very liberal posted land policy.
Right. It's much different than the rest of the country, from what I understand. Now, there's still some responsibility that goes along with that as far as the what you should do is you should still try to obtain permission, from what I understand.
Absolutely.
It's not that it's free reign. It is technically by the letter of the law, but you're still encouraged to become form a relationship with the landowner first.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's to everybody's advantage to do that because, I mean, when you have as many hunters in these areas as we have on the seacoast, there's inevitably going to be problems at some point. And, having a landowner to just kind of bounce things off of, and sometimes they'll even act as mediator and just say, listen, you two knock it off. It could be that simple.
Right.
Or else, it could, if it needs to go to that point, knock it off or else. But there are some other rules that it's not just having free reign. You can't cut shooting lanes. You can't cut any limbs. You can't bring ATVs on posted property. You can't bait on posted property. On private property. Sorry, without permission. You can't hang a tree stand if it damages the tree without landowner permission.
Right. Lots of rules that go along with hunting on land that's not yours.
Correct.
Yet there's still that open policy in New Hampshire where you can hunt on it as long as you respect it.
Yep.
What are some of the challenges that you've bumped into over the years being a guide?
People.
Elaborate on that for us.
There hasn't been a client that has hired me that hasn't heard me tell them that our biggest challenge is other hunters.
Right.
There are so many hunters in the southeast portion of New Hampshire. It's just ridiculous. With those antlerless permits, I mean, there's 4,000 additional deer permits. So it brings people in from all over the state. It brings people in, especially on Sundays, from Maine and Mass, because they can't hunt on Sundays. And you go in and you can pattern an area and you can maybe spend all season bow hunting it. And, I've had years where I've left places alone, like the place that I bait this year. I haven't hunted there myself once, and I'm an avid deer hunter. I've left it alone just for my clients. That's what those bait sites are for. And earlier in the season, I had problems with people walking right through the middle of the bait sites. So you pattern an area, and then if you're not there for a few days, like say on a weekend, and then, lots of people show up there to hunt, as well as I do, everything's going to change. The patterns are going to change. The timing of when the deer come out is going to change. Where they come out is going to change. Just everything's going to change, at least temporarily.
Right.
That can be the biggest challenge.
And how do you go around that? Do you just try to figure out where others are hunting and hunt where they're not?
That's the first goal, yeah. But you can't always do that, which is why I try to have as many places to hunt as I possibly can. My goal every season before the season starts is to find a dozen new places to hunt.
Okay.
I never achieved that goal, but that's the bar that I set, is to try to find a dozen new places that I didn't hunt last year. So I'm always adding to that list, because you lose a couple every year. They get developed or they get overrun, and I just have to vacate and go someplace else.
Right.
So I try to find new places every year and just build on that list all the time, so that when something happens, and a place gets all messed up by other hunters, I can just say, well, we're going to go someplace else tonight.
Gotcha. How many different spots do you access, or do you have on your list of potential go-to places on a year-to-year basis?
20 at least.
Okay.
At least. I mean, we're talking about the seacoast, which is extremely developed. So it's if you look at it from the satellite view, it's just this fragmented puzzle.
Right.
So there are pieces everywhere. They're not all very big, but they all have deer.
Yep. Why is it that the seacoast in New Hampshire has more deer than other parts of New Hampshire?
Development.
Okay.
Yep. That's it. It's just pieces are getting fragmented. These deer are harder to get to. They don't have as much. They're pinched down in these smaller areas, but they still multiply at the same rate.
Right. And
with limited access, because of development, you've got a lot of these postage stamp pieces that might have, if every doe produces 2 fawns, then you get 2 does in one area, you get the potential. Next year now you have 6 deer. You could, and then they migrate out into other areas, and that's just exponential growth.
Right. Yet there are many hunters in the area. There are many extra permits given out, but you still may not be able to access the spots where they tend to hold up. They're smart, right? I mean, they're figuring out where the hunting pressure is, and they're going to go to the spots where you can't get to them.
Exactly.
Yep. Tell us a little bit about a couple of some of your more memorable hunts. Let's talk deer hunting.
Okay.
Can you bring us through kind of like the checklist, the pre-flight that you go through before you bring a client out or on that particular hunt, and then bring us through the hunt itself?
Yeah, I mean, they're really pretty basic. The bulk of the work for me is before the client arrives and after they get a deer on the ground.
Okay.
The scouting. If I have to move a stand a little bit, it's a little bit of work. So, that all starts. It's not something that happens for an individual hunt. It's something that happens for everybody at the beginning of the season. So,
okay.
I'll be out in August and September hanging trail cameras, checking travel corridors. I like to hunt the edges of swamps, so I'll check those, exit and entry points in the swamps to see if there's sign there. And if I have to adjust a stand based on what I'm seeing on the cameras, I'll move some stands around a little bit. That all gets done early. And it might happen a little bit more. I might sit some of those stands during bow season. And then, when the client arrives, I really just try to preempt them ahead of time to make sure that they bring everything they need. Sometimes they want to sit from dark to dark, and they want to sit all day long. So I have to make sure that they bring something to eat, something to drink, and some other essentials. They might have to climb down and go behind a tree somewhere. And so make sure they have all the stuff they're going to need for that.
Gotcha. So you're preparing them for the day.
Yeah.
kind of like making sure they're taken care of and that they have the things that they're going to need, in addition to getting them to the spot. But you're actually making sure they have their equipment and the food and the nutrition that hunter's going to need for the day, depending on how long they want to be out there.
Yeah, and we try to keep them as comfortable as possible. Gotcha. You know, the harder it is, the less they like to do it. So we try to keep it easy, keep it simple, but keep it easy, and make sure that they're comfortable and that they're safe. Cell phones, how are we going to get in contact with each other? If, I've had clients come that I don't have a cell phone, they tell me, and, so we have to make a time that I have to go in and check on them and make sure they're okay and then come back out.
Gotcha.
A lot of times they don't want to sit all day. Most clients don't want to sit all day. They want to come out for lunch, kind of recharge the batteries.
Right.
And we might move them. I might decide the wind shifted. I just randomly showed up and people say, "What are you doing here?" I said, "The wind's shifted. We got to move you. We're going to move you to another stand. We can't have them sitting there for 4 hours with the wind blowing right into a bedding area."
Right. How many different clients can you serve at one time?
I could probably do 2 or 3, but I don't. I do one.
Do one. Okay.
Yep. So again, that goes back to the experience. I want them to have all my attention. They pay good money, and it's really difficult to get them to fill a tag. So if they don't, it works out for me because then I don't have 2 angry clients. I only have 1.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, you're not paying. You're trying to be more successful. That's why I think you hire a guy in the first place. But at the same time, you have to understand that hunting is hunting. It's not shooting. It's that classic adage. But you never really know if you're going to be successful or not. The most successful hunters aren't successful every time they go out.
Right. And a lot of people are under the misconception that hiring a guide means they're going to get a deer.
Right.
And I provide a service. I don't provide deer.
Right. I mean, I would, if you want a deer, just go find some venison somewhere. But it seems like this is one of those things that would make you more successful because, especially if you didn't know the area. To me, a guide is somebody that knows the area better than I do, and I want to be able to go in and hunt there and I don't have that knowledge, and I need to obtain that knowledge quickly. I have a limited amount of time, and I need to know everything I need to know without actually doing my scouting or knowing what's going on in that area. Yep. Bring us through your most memorable guiding experience.
Are we talking deer or just guiding in general?
Just anything you want to talk about. What's the one, like when I say what's your most memorable experience, what comes to your head?
I have this turkey hunting client that comes to hunt with me from Vermont, and that guy, he's a turkey hunter, and we've become friends since. Like he's killed 3 turkeys with me, and he's a turkey hunter. He makes my job so easy, and he's so fun to have in the woods, and he is good. I mean, we can get away with things with him. His first turkey that he took with me was in the spring of 2011. That's when I met him. And we spent two days in the woods, and on the second day, he made a 57-yard shot on a beautiful longbeard. And that guy was a statue. He was a pleasure to be around. We had this bird that was up in a developed area, and everybody and his brother had called to that bird and couldn't get that bird to come down. And we sat there for 2.5 hours, and we were just, resolved that we weren't leaving. We were going to sit there for the rest of the day because, the spring season ends at noon.
Right.
Hunting ends at noon, and so we were going to sit there for the day, and it took us a long time. And that bird finally, all of a sudden, just something happened, and he turned and came walking right in, and at 55 yards, he laid him down. And I just got to the point where I can tell that story without getting this rush of adrenaline. And then he came back this year in the fall season, and he shot one at 65 yards.
Wow. What kind of cannons are you guys carrying? That's crazy.
He has a Mossberg 3.5 inch. He's shooting the heavy shot Magnum blend.
Yeah.
3.5 inch with the heavy shot choke. It's matched to that load. And that stuff, he peppered that bird. I couldn't believe it. He's a turkey hunter, so when he says I can make that shot, I believe him. He's completed a Grand Slam, 2 Twin State Slams. He knows what his range is.
That's a long shot for a turkey. Wow.
That was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. I filmed New Hampshire Chronicle this year.
Yep.
During that week, and we weren't successful that day. It's tough with a camera. And we went out the next day to the same area, and that's at the end of the Chronicle episode. They showed a picture of him and I, and that's the guy. That guy makes guiding turkey hunters worth every client that is a nightmare.
Right. Gotcha. And I'm sure it's like you deal with the public. You're going to have your highs and lows. You're going to have your good clients and your bad clients.
It's a service position.
Yes, it is. It's a service position, and you just never know. What?
Yep.
Tell us. Let's bring us through a deer hunting experience. What's your most memorable deer hunt?
I had this client one time that I brought him out in the morning, and he sat all morning, and you could tell when I picked him up that he wasn't hopeful. He wasn't he was feeling a little discouraged, and you could tell he wasn't feeling very good about the afternoon hunt. And I moved him to another location that I had been seeing this decent, probably 150-pound 4-point buck in that area. And I assured him that, I'd been seeing this deer in there, and he had a good chance, and put some extra scent out, and, left him on the stand. And you could just see the look in his face, like he just felt like he was about to waste an entire evening. I know that look because I've had it,
right.
Right. And so I just went in, and I see that look on clients a lot because they don't know these areas. They don't know what I know about these places. And so I get that look quite a bit. And, I don't worry about it too much, except some of those clients get fidgety. They'll even get down out of the stand and go looking around to prove to themselves that it's worth sitting there. And so I was a little nervous when I left him that he was going to do some roaming, but I hoped that he would see some deer. And I was hopeful enough that I got back to pick him up about 45 minutes before the end of legal shooting time, and I just waited about 300 yards from the stand. I just sat down on a log and I just waited because I had a pretty good feeling that he was going to see a deer.
Yeah.
Sure enough, about 20 minutes before the end of legal shooting light, I heard a shot come from the stand. And I waited about probably 20 minutes, and I made my way part way in, and I whistled, and he hollered, "Come on over." He had that 4-pointer on the ground.
Oh, no kidding.
He was ecstatic. I mean, he was absolutely ecstatic. And he came right out and told me, so, really didn't think I was going to see anything.
Right. So I guess
that's the kind of stuff that makes it all worth it.
Yeah.
The look, it's like seeing that look of that discouraged look. I know how that look feels that a hunter gets after they fill their tag because I felt it. So I know what that looks like.
Right. And there are definitely moments as a hunter that you sit out there for long periods of time and you just kind of feel like it isn't going to happen tonight or today. Yeah. And sometimes you're right, but sometimes you're wrong too. And I guess at the end of the day, you can never really tell. You just have that feeling. Yeah. More often than not, it's not going to happen, right? That's kind of the way this works. You're going to sit out there and not be successful more than you're going to be successful. It's like in baseball. You're not going to, if you're batting 300, you're a great hitter. But that's only becoming successful 3 out of 10 times at the plate.
Right.
But that's the way hunting is.
That's it. You gotta love being in the woods.
Yep.
I just don't see the point in it otherwise.
What type of species do you guide for?
Deer and turkeys.
Okay.
I've guided for moose quite a few years. It's just tough. It's time consuming. I just don't have the time for it anymore because I write, do a lot of writing, and it's just everything else that I've got going on. I don't have the time to put in. It's not fair to the client. It's to skimp on the product. It really is what it is.
Right.
I did bear hunts, and the same deal. It's just so much work. And the bear hunters are travelers, and they most of them want us to fill a tag. They want the home of the bear, so I don't do them anymore. So I stick to deer and turkeys, and then fishing. Gotcha.
And so during the summer, you're doing the fishing on the freshwater and saltwater.
Yeah, I do cat trips for striped bass, and then in the fall we switch over to panfish when the striper fishing slows down.
Gotcha. And then during the turkey season in the spring, you guide for that, and then in the fall. You guide for some turkey during the turkey seasons and also for the deer.
I guide the 5-day shotgun turkey season. I don't do any archery hunt.
No archery. Okay. What's the biggest deer you've ever guided for?
It's probably that 150-pound 4-pointer.
Okay.
The majority of deer that are taken around here are, does in the 100 to 120-pound range.
Okay.
Does and small bucks. There are, those big bucks are pretty pressured, and there's some skill involved most of the time to killing one of those bucks. I mean, I've killed nice bucks by just being in the right place at the right time, but the ones that I've looked for there's some skill involved, as you know.
Right. And there's no guarantee when you're out there. It's just, but you have knowledge of 20 different spots that's probably better than anybody else that knows those spots. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why you want to hire a guide. You want somebody that's more knowledgeable than you are about a particular area.
Yep.
Tim, what's the best way to get a hold of you if people want to book a hunt?
If they go to my website, TimMooreOutdoors.com, everything that they could possibly want to know about our services are on that site. Email address is on there, and they can also find me on Facebook at facebook.com/TimMoreOutdoors.
Okay. All right. And should they call you as well, or just go to the website first?
Just go to the website. Email, there are a lot of times that I can't talk on the phone, but I can email. I get emails on my phone, so email's the best way. That way, I don't have the greatest memory, and if it's in an email, it never gets forgotten.
Gotcha. So that's reach out by email first. Go to the website, TimMoreOutdoors.com, and then you'll see all the information that you need to see. Gotcha. Any other things you'd like to share with us, Tim?
About guiding, or just
anything?
It's almost ice fishing season. I can't wait for that. That's my true passion is ice fishing.
Ice fishing, interesting.
Yeah, we got a lot of ice fishing clients every year, and pro staff for Ice Team and Clam and Vexalar and a few other companies, really good companies that got behind me and helped make those trips really, really successful.
Now, there's something that's very unique to New England and the northern states in the United States is ice fishing. You can't do that in the South. So if you're listening to the show and you'd like to try something completely different, give Tim a call. Go to his website, Tim More Outdoors, and book a ice fishing experience.
Yeah, we do guarantee fish when we're ice fishing.
Exactly. See, that's something that I've had friends from Virginia that came up for the Winnipesaukee Ice Derby, and we were driving up to the event, and we were driving onto the ice with our pickup trucks, because you can do that time of year. And I could see him in the back seat, and I could see him watching the GPS as the land turned to water, and to see his eyes light up like, wait a minute, something's not right. There's an experience there. There's something you'll never forget. It's like, I mean, the Winnipesaukee Derby, I don't know if you really catch a lot of fish, but certainly it's a party on ice and an experience in itself. But to really, truly experience ice fishing, which is different than, I mean, you can't do that everywhere in the world. You can't do that everywhere in the United States, right?
Nope.
So that's a very interesting perspective. So if you want to, if nothing else, try ice fishing. It's just one of those unique experiences that you have to do once in your life if you're an outdoorsman or outdoors woman. So, well, excellent, Tim.
We tell a lot of deer stories while we're ice fishing too. So.
Exactly. It's a great place to sit down and tell deer stories or hunting stories and catch some fish and have fun. That's what it's all about.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a pleasure. Awesome,
Tim. All right, we'll catch you soon. That was very cool. Thanks to Tim again for sharing his insights on the guide service and how he goes about his day as a guide. Next up is one of our favorite parts of the show, and this is the quintessential part of the Big Buck Registry and why we started it in the first place, and that's to share stories, protect and preserve the story, sport, and spirit of big buck hunting. And this week's highlight is with Corey Cole. Corey is from Missouri, and he's going to tell us about how he landed a nice 9-pointer in Missouri. So let's listen in.
I was hunting with a buddy. His name's Greg Rieger.
Okay.
He's just a childhood friend. Grew up together, and this is actually his first year doing a rifle hunt. He's been bow hunting for a while, pretty successful, and he had just gotten his hunter safety so that he could take his son out and do a youth hunt. So I had a couple extra stands down at my dad's, and I invited him down, and so we met up that morning and headed down to the hunt. It wasn't supposed to be a very good day here in Missouri on opening day, okay, which has been kind of typical the last couple of years. Supposed to be warm and super windy, maybe even some rain in the forecast. So we didn't really have high hopes. But on the way down, we saw about 5 deer standing in the road about a mile away from his house on the way down to the hunting spot. And that kind of got our excitement up because they were moving. So we get down to the hunting spot, and we got out of the car. I went ahead and started putting on my gear, and I had listened to your podcast a couple of weeks prior, and you had Dean from Northwoods Common Sense on,
right?
And he kind of talked a little bit about the buck urine instead of doe urine, and it made a lot of sense to me. He basically said if a buck's following a doe and he comes across a trail of doe urine, he's probably not going to stop. But if you put buck urine down, he's going to stop and want to find out, who's in his territory.
Gotcha.
That made a lot of sense to me.
Right.
So I went ahead and gave it a shot this year. So when we got down to the hunting spot, I got my drag rag out that I had sprayed the night before with the buck urine, and went ahead and dragged it behind me to my stand. Walked past my stand a little bit, kind of walked around, turned around, and went back, and took the drag rag off and hung it in a tree just so the wind could kind of blow it around.
Okay.
And went ahead and climbed up and got in my stand. We were there probably 45 minutes before sunrise, just so we can kind of get in early and make sure we didn't spook anything or destroy the hunt.
Gotcha. All right. Let's hold on right there for 1 second. So you're in your stand. Let's back up. You're hunting whitetail, and
yes.
You're hunting in Missouri.
Correct.
Okay. And this is, what day was it?
It was Saturday opening day. I'm not real positive what the actual date was.
Okay, so it was mid-November-ish?
Yes.
Okay.
It was last weekend.
Okay, gotcha. And what was the weather that day?
The weather, it was supposed, walking out of the house, I think it was like 60 degrees.
Okay.
And then the high was supposed to be 70, which it never really got to. And then it was supposed to be 22-mile-an-hour wind gusts.
Wow. Okay. Got it.
So not the perfect day for hunting.
Right. Okay. And describe the landscape for us. Tell us about the trees, and are we looking at fields? Are we looking at trees? What kind of trees? What type of landscape are we hunting in?
I'm pretty much sitting on top of a hill that's looking down at a couple of different, like where a couple of hollers come in together, like fingers, and it's a dry creek bed. So I can see probably max up to 200 yards. It's pretty thick, though. I mean, it would, at a 100-yard shot, you would have to have just the perfect shot.
Okay.
It's pretty tough.
What kind of trees are we talking about?
Probably a lot of oaks and pine.
Oak and pine. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And
this year it seemed to have a lot of seedlings. Like I had lots and lots of seedlings, which weren't there last year. We had a lot of rain early in the season. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking that had to do with that. So it was extra thick this year.
Okay. Any leaves on the ground falling from the trees?
Yes, there was lots of leaves.
Okay.
And that happened just, 3 days prior to the hunt. Almost every tree had all their leaves still, and we had a little windstorm come through and pretty much blew everything off.
Okay. And is it, it's windy, but is it dry or wet?
It is dry right now, yeah.
Okay. So that morning was dry, and the wind's whipping around, leaves are flying. Pretty loud in the woods. Describe your hunt. Okay.
Couldn't hear a whole lot.
Let's go through the pre-flight before we get you back to your stand. Tell us about your head to toe equipment check. Tell us about let's go a step before that. What type of scent control are you using?
Well, I was honestly, I don't remember. Okay. I bought it about 3 years ago. I know it's a turned earth smell.
Okay.
So it just smells like a turned earth.
Okay.
And I normally spray that on about a week prior and just hang all my clothes up in the garage. And
okay.
Just kind of let them air out and let that scent kind of sink in.
Gotcha. Okay. So you got your scent control going. What about the soaps? What do you use to wash with your hair and shower with?
I don't go crazy with that.
Okay.
I just use Dove. It's like a non-scented Dove.
Okay.
So didn't go with any shampoo or anything. I just went ahead and used the bar soap on my hair to kind of keep the scent down.
Okay. And these are the little details that I try to incorporate into the show to make sure that we get all the little parts involved here.
Right.
Tell us about the clothing you're wearing.
I've got a scent lock jacket, which is mossy oak.
Okay.
And then I had Under Armour overalls that I used.
Gotcha. What kind of boots?
My boots are actually military-issued boots from when I was in the Navy.
Okay, gotcha. And are you bringing a pack with you into the woods?
Yeah, I bring quite a bit of stuff. I actually carry in all of my heavy gear, especially since it was so warm.
Okay.
So I wore some blue jeans and like just a black shirt.
Yep.
To walk in and carried all my gear. And I have pretty much like a huge deck stand that my dad had built a long time ago. Mm-hmm. So it's like a 6-foot by 4-foot deck up in 3 different trees.
Okay.
So I got a lot of room up there. So I actually take a lawn chair and sit up in the back.
Gotcha. So this is what you're dressed in. You're dressed in the clothes you just described, and you brought that to your stand along with a lawn chair. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Very cool. As far as your pack, do you have your pack with you at that point?
Yes. I have a belt pack with my canteen and then all of my scent lures and my buck calls.
Okay.
Or my calls.
All right, so you got it loaded up with equipment. You've got calls in there for what type of calls are you using?
I actually had just picked up the extinguisher.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of that one. It's like a slide reel call, and you can do fawn, doe, and buck all with just a flip of the thumb.
Okay.
It's slide back and forth. And what's cool about it is if you were hunting when it's really cold out, that it's not supposed to freeze. If it does, you can actually just move that slide, and it's supposed to free it up.
Gotcha.
What really turned me on to it or sold me to it though was that you could basically make a young buck or a mature buck sound within seconds of each other. It's really kind of a neat call.
Okay, so it's a pretty versatile type of call. You can make all kinds of sounds and guaranteed not to freeze. Not that you needed it on this day because it was 60 degrees.
No,
gotcha.
No, definitely not.
All right, so you've got a scent lineup too. You said in your fanny pack. What type of scents you carrying?
Because of your show, I heard Dean on Northwoods Common Sense talking about his product, and what sold me on it and made the most sense was that his you can add a little bit. You can start with doe urine early in the season because I am a bow hunter.
Yep.
So he was talking about how early in the season, that like when bow season starts, that you can use doe urine or just straight buck urine. And what's cool about his is that you actually have the sprayers on the side.
Right.
So you can start with doe urine and gradually add the estrus,
right,
the doe and heat or the buck with tarsal. And that really just made a lot of sense to me. So actually, as soon as I was driving, I drive for a living, so I listen to podcasts, and instantly I got to a job and ordered his power pack. I ordered all 4 scents immediately. So that's what I had in my pack.
Gotcha. And from that point, you've got a weapon. What type of weapon are you carrying today?
I'm carrying a Browning 30-06.
Okay, so you got your Browning 30-06, you got your scents, you got your clothing, you got your lawn chair, and you've made your way out to the stand mid-November. It's warm, it's windy, it's really loud, and you're sitting there. What brought you to the spot in the first place? How did you find the spot?
Actually, my dad probably, and I'm guessing, but 10 or 15 years prior to this year, he had been sitting on the ground and shot a deer, and he had tracked it to this spot, and it died basically in the dry creek bed just down from this stand. And he had never really walked that area of the woods and just thought, man, this is a great spot, and has had great success ever since then. He's killed probably 5 or 6 deer pretty much in like a 5 square yard area that every year they just end up in that area.
Okay. So it's something that you're a doe that your dad had shot had led you to this spot.
Correct.
And you realized that it was a good spot to hunt. Okay.
Yes.
Set up a stand. Is it private land or public land?
It's private.
Private. Okay. So you had to get permission from the landowner to go?
My dad. Dad owns it.
It's your dad's property. Gotcha. Okay. And you spent some time kind of scouting it out and deciding where to put the stand.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Bring us back to the moment in the stand. So you've taken your Deer Vanier's Northwoods Common Sense buck lure and you put it on a drag rag. You've dragged it to your stand with you, and now it's hanging from the stand. And pick up the story from there.
So I got in my stand, got my lawn chair out, got my gun loaded up, just sit there, just thinking, I can't see anything yet, and man, the wind has just hit me from every side. In Missouri, it's really hard to keep the wind at your face.
Okay.
It's just so hilly here that the wind just whips around, and it just comes at you from all different directions. So the sun starts coming up, and normally you hear shots before the sun's up, and I don't think I heard one this year. I don't think it was I just don't think it was a very good year for hunting. But the sun finally comes up, and you kind of hear a couple of shots. It's been probably half an hour after the sun's came up, so we're talking, I don't know, probably 6:30 now. And I hear a shot that's pretty close that I'm thinking is definitely my buddy. And now that we have smartphones, you can kind of communicate. So I sent him a text and said, man, is that you? And he sent me a text back. No, it wasn't me, but it was close to me.
Okay.
So we hear a couple more shots, and it's about 7 o'clock now. And the wind is coming from the north, and it hits me, and I get a huge whiff of doe urine, or of a deer urine, and it's coming from where my drag rag's hanging. So I'm like, man, it's just super, super strong smell. I can't imagine that that's that drag rag. So I had actually got my gun up and kind of was holding it just to be safe, and wind gust again coming from that same direction. Another big scent of deer urine. There's got to be something up there. So it's about 7:15, 7:20, and I hear something behind me at pretty much a full run. I glance over my right shoulder, and I see a buck coming, and he's just hopping. I never did see the doe, but I heard something. He was chasing something.
Okay.
I don't know if it was a buck or I'm not positive. I'm pretty sure it was a doe the way he was acting. And he's just hopping, following her. And he gets to where I had walked through with that drag rag and just stopped dead in his tracks. It was pretty awesome actually to see this. He just stopped instantly and started pawing at the ground and snort wheezing right where I had walked in. It got my heart going. It was pretty cool.
That's crazy.
But yeah, it really was crazy. But I didn't have a shot. I could really only see his nose and his front legs. I couldn't even see his antlers, so I didn't know if he was a shooter yet.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to be patient. I'm about breaking my neck trying to look at him, but he's behind a tree. So that goes on for a couple of minutes and just kind of grunting a little bit and snort wheezing a couple of times, still pawing at the ground, just kind of looking around, trying to see, where this buck is. Then he moves where he's right directly behind me, and now he's directly behind a big tree. I can't even barely see him at all.
Okay.
So then I hear, coming from the same exact direction, some more footsteps, and here comes a little bitty six-pointer walking down right where that doe and buck just came from. He gets about 20 yards from the big buck, the one that I ended up shooting, and he turns around and squats and pisses and just stares at this other buck. And I'd never experienced this before in the woods. It was pretty awesome. So he's trying to mark his territory, and the big buck, I still can't really see him, and he finally starts coming around to my left-hand side. So I've got this little guy on my right, and he's right, eye level with me pretty much. So I can't move because I don't want to spook him, and that's going to spook this other one that I can't really see still. But they seem to be pretty occupied with each other.
Yep.
They really didn't even care about me being there.
Right.
So the big buck just kept moving around to my left, and the little one kept moving around to my right. And it looked like they were headed to basically fight right in front of me. They were kind of circling around towards each other, just doing little grunts and snort wheezes at each other. Finally, the big buck, he comes off to my left about 15 yards from my stand and just gives me the perfect shot. Stands, perfectly broadside, no trees, nothing in the way. I pulled my gun up, got it on him, pulled the trigger, and he bolted. Just took off. And I'm like, man, I know that was a good shot. I know it was.
Right.
And so I looked at the six-pointer, and he just kind of standing there still. So I pulled my gun back up. And while the big buck was running after I shot him, I put it on him again, shot again, still just keeps running. He runs down the hill through the dry creek bed, which is about 100 yards away, and up the other hill and out of sight. Man, I don't know what happened.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so the six-pointer's still standing there. He's just, I've shot twice, and he's just standing there, almost kind of like, I got him out of here. I scared him. It was pretty funny. He just goes back grazing, the six-pointer, so I'm just kind of sitting watching him, and he pops his head up and looks over in the direction where this buck had just ran off to.
Yeah.
So I look over there, and all I see is a tail do an end over end and then fall into the creek. He had started running up that hill and fell down and rolled down the hill and back down into the creek.
No way.
That's when I knew I had him. I was like, oh, man.
So you you could see him about 100 yards away? Is that about how far?
Right.
Wow, and you could see his tail roll back down into the creek.
That's the only way I saw him is if he had flipped over, and so his tail flopped down and hit the ground, and I just saw a brief second of white, and then he flipped over into the creek, and I was like, yeah. That was that picture that I sent you was actually he had fell. He had landed right at the edge of that dry creek up against the log.
Gotcha. That's fantastic. What a great story.
It was pretty awesome.
Awesome. All right, let's talk a little bit about the deer extraction. How'd you get them out of the woods?
Well, I hunt. That stand is literally 50 yards from my dad's barn.
Okay.
Off into the woods. So I went ahead and just walked up to the barn. He has a four-wheeler in there.
Yeah.
Grabbed the four-wheeler. First, I walked down to, just to make sure that he was dead.
Yeah.
Trying to make sure I tried to find him. And I walked where I thought that I had seen him, and it wasn't there. And I'm like, what in the world? Where did he go? And I seen him.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy how well they blend in.
It's funny how they do that, isn't it? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was about 20 yards from him, and I couldn't see him at all. And I'm like, oh my God, I know he was here. I know he didn't take off.
Right.
And then I found him. So made sure he was dead, and he was dead. So I went up to the barn, got the four-wheeler out, drove it down there, and I was thinking I was going to be like He-Man and just be able to throw him up on the rack.
Yeah.
And that wasn't happening. It's pretty awkward how heavy they are.
Yeah.
When they're dead like that. So he had a rope on it, so I went ahead and tied a rope around his front end, and then kind of tucked it up underneath his head to keep his antlers up off the ground. And just drug him right out into the front yard. And by about that time, I had already contacted my dad and Greg, the guy I was hunting with. And my dad basically met me in the front yard about the same time that I was pulling out.
Very cool. And tell us about the specs on the deer. Tell us about the racks and the approximate score if you had one done, and weight and stuff like that.
I didn't have a score done. It was 14 inches between tip to tip.
Okay.
And it was technically a 9-pointer.
Okay.
Because one of the points was not an inch long.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I guess that's kind of how they go for that. But
Yep.
It had a point. And my buddy's like, well, I was always told if you can hang a ring from it, it counts.
Right.
So we can hang a ring from it. So I go ahead and mark it up as a 10-pointer. But whenever I telechecked it, it was a 9-pointer. So.
Gotcha. And did you have it weighed in?
I did weigh it. Field dressed, it was at 123.
Gotcha. It was a real pretty rack from the picture that you sent.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. It was pretty much symmetrical except for that one little point. The one little point was the only difference, but yeah, for the most part, it was pretty symmetrical. It was a nice buck.
Gotcha. And what did you? How did you butcher it? What did you do with the meat?
Actually, we hung it up in a tree in my dad's front yard, and my stepmom didn't really like that very much. She's like, "Really? You're gonna just do that right there?"
Yeah.
But yeah, so we hung it up, and Greg's done this before, so he kind of took charge and started skinning it, and we quartered it out right there, threw it in a cooler.
Yep.
And what I do with my deers, my wife doesn't eat meat really.
Okay.
She'll eat chicken, but she won't eat deer. And I've got 2 young sons. They don't really eat that stuff.
Yeah.
So I give it to my sister. She has 5 kids, and they all eat it. They love it. So I just went ahead and quartered it up, and then I give it to her. She processes it, and then I just kind of take whatever I want from it, and they get to enjoy it.
Sounds like a good system. That's there's some sustenance that gets spread around to the family members. That's fantastic. And
right.
Are you having it mounted?
I did. I'm going to do a European mount.
European mount, and you're going to do it by yourself or on your own?
I was going to do it the very next day on Sunday, and I got online and looked on YouTube.
Yep.
It looked like way too hard of a process, so I found a guy that is going to do it for $65. So I couldn't beat that.
That's beautiful. Well, excellent. Congratulations, Corey. It's a great story. We're glad you had some success by listening to our podcast and listening or using some of Dean's Northwoods common sense.
If I would have never listened to your podcast, I honestly don't think that I would have had this buck, and I would have definitely not had this story to tell. So I want to thank you and thank Dean very much. I'm going to keep listening to the podcast because I hunted when I was a kid with my dad, and then kind of got out of it and went into the military. Just didn't have anywhere to hunt when I was in the military. When I got out, I started getting back into it. Yep. So I would consider myself a pretty new hunter, and I've learned a lot just from listening to your podcast. So
very cool.
Thank you.
Well, that makes us feel great. That's why we're here, trying to make everybody a better hunter and bring some tips and tricks that'll make everybody a little more successful in the field. And thank you for your service to the country. That's most appreciated.
Not a problem, Jeff.
All right. Well, Corey, this is great. We'll have this out on the next podcast, which is coming out at 5 a.m. on Saturday. So tune in, listen to yourself tell the story. That'll be great.
Sounds good.
All right, that's a show, everybody. Thank you to Tim Moore from Tim Moore Outdoors and sharing with us his opinion and all his insights on the guide service, and to Corey Cole for sharing his story about the Missouri whitetail that he harvested just recently using the Northwoods Common Sense, which we highlighted on the show just a few weeks ago. So if you'd like to reach out to us, if you would like to be on a hunter highlight segment of the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck podcast, all you got to do is first send in a picture to the Facebook page, and that's facebook.com/Big Buck Registry. Send in a photo. We'll reach out to you from there, and maybe we can get you lined up to tell your story for the podcast. You can also give us a call at 724-613-2825, 724-613-2825. Just leave us a message or feedback about the show, or tell a story if you have some, and we'll reach back out to you if we want to put you on the show to tell that story in a little more detail. And you can always reach us at bigbuckregistry.com, and of course on iTunes, Stitcher, and Blueberry, the podcast directories, and on Libsyn, Libsyn. So hope everybody's staying safe, and we'll see you next time right here on the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck podcast. Can't wait.